Well, again, thank you everyone for tuning in today. This is the Center for Wildlife Studies monthly presentation of Wildlife Wednesday. It's great seeing so many people joining in. Looks like we're all seeing America so far, in Mexico. My name is Jeff Stetz. I'm the Director of Science and Assistant Professor here at the Center. And one of my favorite parts of my job is getting to work with amazing researchers and educators like Melania, who today will be presenting on her work. And that's what this program is all about with the center, is to try and showcase the work and conservation contributions, education, outreach efforts, and so on of our amazing collaborators and peers and staff at the center. And today is no exception. Today is a little bit extra special because of the topic. A little biased, definitely. Who doesn't love sea turtles, right? Today, I'm super excited to welcome Dr. Melania López-Castro, and apologize for my breaking up here as I let people into the presentation. Melania is a marine biologist and sea turtle conservation scientist whose work focuses on understanding the movements, habitat connectivity, and recovery of threatened sea turtle populations across the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic. As coordinator of the Sea Turtle Conservation Program at Pronatura Península de Yucatán and instructor of the Center for Wildlife Studies, Dr. López-Castro combines long-term field monitoring with innovative research techniques to address pressing conservation challenges. Her work has contributed to our understanding of sea turtle ecology and provided critical information for the conservation and management of many imperiled sea turtle species. And with that, I will continue letting people into the presentation, and we'll gladly turn it over to Melania.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and welcome everybody. It's always so nice to talk about sea turtles, and I'm honored and excited to have so many people from so many places today hearing a little bit of what we do here in Mexico, but it's also how it relates to other conservation strategies around the world. So I want to start with this. So imagine this little hatchling that you see on your screen. It is the size of your hand, and this little turtle is going to leave the nesting beach tonight. It may not touch land again for decades, and that is if it survives. So most of sea turtles' life happens where we can't see it, and yet we are expected to protect it. So how do we do it, right? So imagine trying to solve a puzzle where most of the pieces are missing. That's what understanding sea turtles has been like for the past 50 years, especially when after the industrial scale fisheries and overexploitation pushed many sea turtle populations close to collapse worldwide. So only then we began to realize how little we actually knew about their lives in the ocean and how much we needed to learn to bring them back from the brink of extinction. So today I want to share how we've been putting those pieces together, what we know, what we've learned from nesting beaches, and what we're still trying to understand. So first off, sea turtles are not just iconic or charismatic organisms. They are engineers of the ocean and coastal ecosystems. They maintain seagrass beds, they support reef health, they connect ecosystems by providing rich nutrients in the form of eggs to coastal dunes, for example. So that's why conserving and protecting sea turtles matter. The other complication, or the other big enigma, is that sea turtles don't live in one place. They are constantly migrating, and their lives are divided into stages, and each of these stages occurs in a completely different environment. So we go from let me change to the next slide. So the beginning is on a nesting beach. So we have females that return to the same beach every 2 to 3 years to nest. They can lay between 80 to 120 eggs per nest and can nest 4 to 8 times during the nesting season. This is one of the few moments of their life cycle that we can actually observe. So after 40 to 60 days, hatchlings emerge from the nest, and from the moment they hatch, the odds are against them. There are too many predators after them in that small stretch between the nest and the beach. Crabs, raccoons, birds, we have feral dogs now, and they need to move really fast and enter the water as quickly as possible to avoid all of those predators. So they go into the water and then they disappear. They use ocean currents to travel far from the coast. And for many years, we didn't know where they went. That's why this stage of their life is called the lost years, because we didn't even know how many time they spent on these oceanic foraging grounds. So even though we still don't fully know, we have a better idea. And that is thanks to a set of tools that we now have, especially satellite telemetry or stable isotope analysis. And thanks to those tools, we are slowly building this lost year stage. We now know that hatchlings move to open ocean and stay there almost a decade, and they are usually protected by sargassum mats or other floating objects until the time comes when they need to migrate again into coastal foraging grounds. So at that point in time, like I said, turtles migrate to coastal foraging grounds to continue their development. And in these coastal habitats, they will feed and grow until they reach sexual maturity, which in average takes about a decade. So risks on these coastal foraging grounds are also new. There are new threats like bycatch, boat strikes, and pollution. Nowadays, the biggest threat, the biggest pollutant is plastic, right? So once sea turtles reach sexual maturity, environmental conditions signal the start of the reproductive migration. Some travel thousands of kilometers only to return to the same beach where they were born. So this map is an example of how satellite telemetry has helped identify migration routes of nesting females, particularly the loggerhead species. So what you see there are in colors are the different migratory routes that sea turtles use or loggerhead turtles use. So the darker the color means that that's a well-used migration route. And the lighter colors are just spots that we're still trying to understand. So those are lighter connections in a way, or less frequent highways, if you want to see it like that. So far what you've seen is that sea turtles use many habitats throughout their life. And to protect sea turtles, we need to protect all of these environments. The problem is that you cannot use the same strategies in each of these environments, right? So there are certain rules or certain protocols that you can use in a nesting beach that are not going to be useful in an oceanic foraging ground or in a coastal foraging ground. And the other thing is the accessibility to these different habitats is really complicated, right? So the first step in sea turtle conservation back in the 50s was to start where we can actually have access to sea turtles, right? So the beach is that's why the beach is where we have learned the most. Access to nesting beaches was a major turning point for sea turtle conservation. It allowed scientists around the world to establish long-term monitoring programs and begin answering some of the most fundamental questions about these animals that we didn't know before. So through decades of work on nesting beaches, we began to understand when turtles were nesting, how many eggs they laid, the minimum reproductive size of females, and how nesting populations were changing over time. So later, tagging programs gave us an even clearer picture. By identifying individual females, we could estimate growth rates, reproductive output, internesting intervals, which is the time they spend between one hatch and another, and migratory patterns. And also, one of the other advantages of these metal tags was that we were able to identify some connections between nesting beaches and distant foraging grounds. Perhaps most importantly, long-term monitoring allowed us to evaluate whether the conservation strategies that we were trying out were actually working or not. And that also gave us an advantage because now we could test these strategies and change them if they were not working. So the good news is that after decades of work on the nesting beaches, we are starting to see results. So the graph that I'm presenting right now is the work that we, Pronatura Península de Yucatán, has been doing for the past 36 years now. And as you can see, the nesting trends are increasing over time. So when the program started back in 1990, we only counted dozens of eggs, or dozens of nests. And through time, those dozens have become thousands. And that positive tendency has been maintained through time. So this is just one beach, but in studies that we have conducted, we're seeing that nesting numbers are increasing in the Mexican Caribbean and other parts of the world. And this year, the green turtle went from endangered to least concern in the IUCN Red List, which is, very good news for sea turtle conservation. Even though they're still dependent on conservation, that means that we still need to take care and protect their ecosystems. It's good news that the population is actually growing. So even with all this work, key pieces of the biology of sea turtles and key pieces of the life cycle of the sea turtles are still missing. For example, we still know surprisingly little about the lost years of sea turtles. We don't know how many oceanic foraging areas exist. How are those connected to coastal feeding grounds? And there are another major gaps, for example, males. We don't know much about the male component of any population of sea turtles. So most of what we know comes from nesting beaches. We don't know how many males are out there, where do they gather, if they use the same migratory routes as females, what threats are they facing in case they're using different habitats than the females. So there's still hidden pieces that we can only solve part of the conservation challenge. Or what I'm trying to say is that until we understand more of those hidden pieces, we can only solve part of the conservation challenge. So I don't think it changed, hopefully. So one of the things is that through these 50 years, we've understand some of the threats, right? So we know a lot about threats to sea turtles on nesting beaches. We know that light pollution is a big issue for hatchlings, as it is for the females, because they cannot find an ideal set of conditions for them to lay their eggs. There's a lot of plastic pollution. We are beginning to understand a little bit of the problems on coastal waters, like bycatch in fisheries and marine pollution, that are probably one of the bigger threats right now in open oceans. And one other complication is that even though locally people are doing things to control or to reduce these threats, turtles move. Like I said at the beginning of my talk, they migrate, and they don't recognize political boundaries. So a turtle protected on one beach may spend the rest of its life moving through waters of different countries and facing different threats and different policies. So that is what it creates another layer of complexity, right? So some of the habitats we know the least about oceanic habitats during the last years or by adult females may extend across entire ocean basins. That means that threats turtle face can also change from country to country and from fishery to another, or from one conservation policy to the next. In many cases, turtles spend more time outside protected areas than inside them, and that is definitely a conservation issue. So the figure that I'm showing here is a study in the coast of Africa, and what you're seeing them is that movement from turtles that come to nest to a nesting beach right in your right side, and how they move through the different countries to eat, to forage. So that implies that in order to have success in sea turtle conservation, we need to work together, right? So countries need to align their policies together to try to figure out the best way to conserve sea turtles. And this is exactly why long-term monitoring programs matter so much, right? Even when turtles move across borders, long-term data collected at nesting beaches allow us to detect population changes, identify trends, and understand whether conservation efforts are working. So these beaches become reference points for understanding a much larger oceanic story. How do we know that? Imagine a foraging ground thousands of kilometers from where you live, right? And a oil spill happens in that particular area. There's going to be contamination in that foraging ground, and there are probably going to be people working around it and try to control it. But the effects of that oil spill are going to be in two different levels, right? They're going to be direct. A lot of turtles are going to die in that particular area due to the oil spill. But those that survive are going to be also affected. And that is going to be reflecting once they come to nesting beaches. So if they go to a beach that has a long-term monitoring program in place, they can actually see if, for example, survival of the hatchlings is affected, if there are contaminants in the blood of these hatchlings or the turtles. And the other thing is that we're going to observe is that the number of nesting females that arrive, 2 years or 3 years after the spill, is going to be related to that, right? So that's the advantage of having these monitoring programs in place. So the other important thing is that just as sea turtles cross borders, conservation also has to move beyond borders. So one key factor in sea turtle conservation is community collaboration. It is essential on nesting beaches, but unfortunately, it is not enough on its own. So protecting migratory species requires cooperation among scientists, among governments, local communities, fisheries, and organizations across multiple countries. So in many ways, sea turtles reminds us that ocean is connected and that conservation has to be connected too. There are so many programs working, isolated in the same region, and it will be ideal that at some point these governments come together and discuss policies, right? So turtles move around the world, and that forces us to work together, even though we sometimes are reluctant to do it. So to start finishing my presentation, I want to say this. We're still solving the puzzle of sea turtles. Every nesting beach monitored, every migration route identified, every community involved, and every international collaboration adds another piece to this puzzle. And while many questions remain unanswered, we now understand far more than we did 50 years ago. And most likely, if we work together and continue doing this work on nesting beaches, we will learn a lot more in another 50 years. So thank you again for attention. And now we have time for questions.
Thanks, Melania. See, we've got a couple of hands raised, but I can't quite see who they are. So folks want to just go ahead and unmute and ask questions or put them in the chat box, either way. I thought we had some hands raised. But until someone speaks up or posts a question,
yes,
I'll ask for us civilians, what can we do to help?
There are so many things that we as civilians can do, right? Especially those living in coastal areas, it is really important to understand that if you live in a nesting beach, there are rules that you have to follow. For example, during the nesting season, all the lights that on the nesting beach should be turned off. Turtles do not like the light; they like the dark. And if the beach is really illuminated, they will stop nesting there. Another issue is that turtles will, the small hatchlings will get disoriented with the light, and instead of going into the water, they will go into the buildings, and they are more prone to predators and dehydration. So, avoid lights at all costs. Start by recycling, consume less plastics. There's always so many options that you can do. Volunteering, it's another thing. So we have a volunteering program here in place in our nesting beaches. People are welcome to come. We are working from April to October, and it, in addition to being a great experience on the field, you get to actually be part of conservation. If you cannot come down to Mexico or to any other nesting beach, there's always ways to support these particular activities. You can donate. So be aware of what the policies are around your country. So, for example, the Species Conservation Act in the U.S. is right now, in the balance right now. So people can speak out and make sure that the government knows why these acts are important, and what is at what it will cost to lose those kinds of acts.
I'm not sure if you can see the chat, but Jessica has a question asking, what was the biggest surprise about your work, either a challenge or a finding?
Wow, there are so many surprises and challenges. When you find species that are not supposed to nest, or they're very rare, this year and last year we have leatherback turtles nesting in our beaches, which you never expect to see a huge turtle coming out into the from the water to lay their eggs. So that is a surprise. That's usually a really nice surprise. Bad surprises, when you find things like dogs eating nests, dogs that shouldn't be there. So there's always good and bad things happening on the nesting beaches.
Yeah, a lot of the images I'm sure we've all seen have been just kind of heartbreaking when you showed of a turtle caught in a net and
right,
plastics
yes,
and everything. And if anyone hasn't seen a sea turtle underwater, I highly recommend it. I was able to go diving in Florida in February and spend some time, and it's a surreal experience. It's
definitely
really tough to beat.
Yeah.
We have a couple more questions. Victoria asked, what was your favorite sea turtle encounter?
My favorite sea turtle encounter. Wow, I think that was back in 1998, 2000 probably. That was my first turtle. It was an olive ridley turtle. I was just beginning my work as a sea turtle biologist there, and seeing the whole process, how she came out of the water, chose the right spot to nest, lay the eggs. It was an amazing experience.
Before I know we're going to be losing folks here, I'm going to put a link to Melania's course for one, and here's another link I'll put up in a second for our next presentation as well. And also, before I forget, I want to send a special thank you to folks who contributed, who donated to the program today. This is a new platform for us, and we really appreciate the support, of course. Miguel has a question. Can you go into more detail about where you're seeing your hatchlings going, or more about the techniques you're exploring to discover more about their lost years?
Absolutely, yes. So there are two techniques that are being used recently. My research, my PhD research, focuses precisely on that, trying to figure out where in the open ocean green turtles went. We use stable isotope analysis of scutes. So the scute of sea turtle is an inert tissue. It doesn't change once it's deposited. And the advantage is that because it is one layer is on top of another, you get like a history of the turtle life in that tissue. So we use the trace element analysis, stable isotopes of lead, carbon, and nitrogen to figure out where turtles were. And we collected samples from small turtles that have recently recluded to coastal foraging grounds. We took the skewed sample, analyzed the layers of the skewed to try to figure out how the changes of habitat occur. And then we compared those signals, especially trace element signals, to signatures in the ocean, different regions in the ocean. So what we found was that once they go into the water in the different nesting beaches, they go into different foraging grounds, oceanic foraging grounds. And from there, they also move to different coastal foraging grounds. So the areas that we recognize as potential oceanic foraging grounds were the Sargasso Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, the coast of the Azores, and we found 2 potential foraging grounds near the coast of Africa and 1 in Brazil. So the study was focused on the Atlantic region. So there's a lot of connection. It's like turtles connect so many different areas that it's really important to understand exactly this connection so we can better strategize our conservation measures.
Yeah, it's a much bigger twist than most of us deal with, even with terrestrial species that migrate
Exactly,
or hibernate or become difficult to track at times. It's a whole different realm with entire oceans at their disposal. The isotope work, that sounds incredible. And I think linking isotope work with the GPS location data could be incredibly powerful. And just to throw this in there, just for the segue sake, our next presenter is actually the president of the Center for Wildlife Studies, who is presenting on his work with stable isotopes using lasers to look at bear diets. It's another pretty big advance with the temporal resolution of diets along the shaft of the hair. You can get almost daily changes in the diets. And if you can link that to location data, I think it's gonna be very, very powerful. And it looks like I put up the wrong post, but it's on the same Wildlife Wednesday page if people want to register for that. Looks like Harshul has a question. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions people have when it comes to sea turtle conservation? That's a great question.
So the biggest misconceptions is precisely that sea turtles are usually constrained to one region. I guess Mexico, for example, is like the idea is that if we protect the nesting beaches here, that's all. That's the best we can do, and that's not really true. Sea turtles are moving everywhere, so we need to understand that it's just one part of their life cycle that we're protecting, and there's 4 more stages that we don't know of that we really need to work. So that's the big misconception, that sea turtles are just in one place and I should just protect this place, and that's true.
Then you talk about how much they can move.
Right.
What are some other life history fun facts? How long do some of these species live? What's maybe the longest lived species?
That's a good question. And that's a question that I usually get from other talks that I've given, is like, how do you know how old a turtle is? It's like, we don't know. We have estimates, and that's all we can do, because following a turtle in the ocean is really complicated. So based on tagging, the estimate is that turtles can live between 80 to 100 years, but it's just an estimation. They could probably live more, but we haven't found the right tool to follow the same turtle through time, especially in that time frame. It's a lot easier to track terrestrial turtles, like in the Galapagos. Someone somewhere. I mean, you can have a lot of people following the same turtle through time, but when you have sea turtles in the ocean, that's really complicated.
Yeah, and that detection and redetection issue becomes much, much more complicated. And I wonder if epigenetics will be useful someday for that, looking at the chronological and biological aging via epigenetics. That's another emerging field, rapidly emerging. It could be another powerful tool for you.
Yes, I'm aware of one study working on senescence of sea turtles, and I'm not sure if they published it yet, but it will be an interesting paper to read, definitely.
John has another good question. What is your confidence level on the initial nesting counts in 1990 compared to later years in terms of possible differing effort levels or more widespread patrolling? Or could you tell him a little about how you account for that while separating it from clear increased nesting over time?
Yes. So one of let me organize my ideas in my head. It's really complicated when you're switching from Spanish to English. So how we account for that? So we monitor the same stretch of beach at the three spots that we have, Celestún, El Cuyo, and Holbox. So we have specific stretch of beach that we monitor, which is usually between 24 kilometers in two of the nesting beaches and 32 kilometers in the other one. So we use the same effort. So we go out every night counting every nest. We record them, we count them. There's definitely some error, but I think it's very minimal. And the effort is still the same. So we use one vehicle to go, registering nests, and we have the same number of people going through, the monitor, the surveys. That's the word. So that's how we know that nesting is increasing, because it's the same nesting beach. We're using the same protocol since 1990, and that's one way to also, reduce the error in the accountability. So there's definitely some nests that we don't see. There's definitely some females that we don't see, but overall, I think we can record. We've estimated that we record about 90% of the nests that are laid on our nesting beaches.
That's great. It's heartbreaking. I mean, students I work with and in my marker capture realm who have not been able to standardize their efforts or design, and it's like, exactly like John was getting at. What can you say if your efforts all over the map? Christina has a question.
Yes.
What advice can you give about bridging the international conservation gap?
Well, I guess one of the things that we can do is, and I think that's the part that is working, is that scientists tend to collaborate a lot more regardless of their government posture, right? So I think that's what we need to keep working on. Open up communications between scientists, between communities, even phone calls or workshops, things that we can all sit together and discuss what we're doing, helping each other to standardize protocols perhaps, and share that information. That will help a lot more. Governments switch from time to time, and that usually messes things up, but the work that scientists and communities do tend to last longer than governments.
And going back to what I said about diving, I think if we had more leaders who could experience this firsthand, they might have a greater appreciation.
Absolutely.
Say the obvious, but it'd be a very good experience, I think. Another question: how can you convince a government supervisor that it is important to try to count all endangered nests?
Can you repeat that question? I couldn't hear you.
How can you convince a government supervisor that it is important to try to count all endangered nests?
Well, one of the things that we usually suggest to our governments is that, that's like a unit that we need to know in order to learn if the species that we're interested in conserving is actually being protected, if it's actually recovering or not. We need that information. If we do not record the nest, then we don't know how the population is doing. Like I said, the nest is the unit that we are most likely going to find on a nesting beach. You're probably going to miss a lot of females, but not the nests. So that's like a unit that you can count on to monitor how your population is doing. So that's why you need to convince them. I know it's difficult, especially because it's just not here in Mexico, but I think worldwide, developing or coastal development is an issue, and sometimes coastal development is associated with progress. but we need to stand our foot and be firm in that decision that coastal ecosystems are important, and they have a function, they have a protection function. They are also habitat for many species, and we should be focusing on protecting them and not destroying them.
And I, if I may add to that, I'd say that reminding people that it's cheaper to conserve than to recover.
Absolutely.
Trying to avoid having formerly worked for a state agency in the US, there's a lot of effort into keeping species off the endangered species list instead of dealing with it after the fact. And also I'd say tourism, as much as it's a catch-22, these are, some of these areas I imagine bring in a lot of tourist money because of the attraction of, I mean, I'm an example of that. So I think those are a couple of pretty strong incentives for governments to try and stay ahead of this as best they can. Victoria has another question. Thank you. What path can a potential graduate student take to help? Like if someday they want to do something similar to you, what's your career advice for aspiring turtle conservationists and researchers?
You should, you should take every opportunity you have to participate in different conservation programs, and not just programs in your country. Try to explore programs in other countries, because we're not the same, right? We have different cultures. We will probably have same goals, but we think differently. And how each country approaches conservation gives you more experience on how things can actually work, right? So we can all learn from each other. So jump in, volunteer. That's usually the best way to learn about the issues happening around the world in sea turtle conservation. The other thing is, speak up again. If there's a subject that you're interested in, talk to your professors, find literature, try to learn a lot more about what the issue is, so you can come up with better ideas of how to solve a problem.
Yeah, again, I just couldn't agree more that volunteering in particular, trying to get your foot in the door, these charismatic species can be really tough to break into, but that's maybe among the best routes to do so. Do we have any other questions from folks? Certainly appreciate the great questions. It's nice to see so much engagement. Makes my job easier as well. Because otherwise I just keep asking questions. Do you have a favorite species, or one that's most fascinating? Or
like I have like my top 5 of species. So the one that I really think it's beautiful and I really like is the green turtle, which is the most common one. But I do have a soft spot for olive ridleys, because that's the species that I started working with, and they will always have a special place in my heart. Hawksbill will be my number 3, because that's another species that I'm working on right now. My number 4 will be leatherback turtles, because just they're amazing and huge. We cannot see them that often here, but they are just magnificent. And my top 5 will be the loggerhead, and that's because the anatomy of that loggerhead is just also impressive. It's a big head, huge head, different type of diet. I mean, it's every single turtle is different, but those are my top 5s.
Sure, excellent choices. Any other questions, folks up there? Okay, Jessica's another question. Thank you again, Jessica. How much collaboration and outreach do you do with communities, and what do you see as most effective for engaging with adults? And parenthetically, she says kids are easier. They're already curious and open to wonder, but we need to sway the adults.
One of the things that we've learned through time is that when you approach a community in any sector, if it's a fisherman or a farmer, you always need to approach them humbly. Well, I don't know how to word this, but you need to get into your level. You are not there to teach them anything. You're there to learn from them. And that's something that will help you understand their perspective, and they will be more prone to collaborate with you. It's like you're going to ask their help they've been living in the ocean and they've been living in that coastal zone for ages. They know way more than you think you know, right? So that's always the approach that you need to know. You're going to learn from them. They're going to help you, and that usually, like I said, makes them more prone to collaborating with you. We do different type of outreach. We usually we give workshops. We usually go and present the project, say this is what we want to do here in your coastal foraging area or your coastal nesting area, and we need your help. We don't know, for example, where the turtles are, but you probably have seen them on the ocean. Can you show us where you see them more frequently? So those kinds of engagement with the people are usually better. And of course we teach them. So once you have a turtle, this is how you measure them. So we teach them, you know, the protocols that we use for monitoring, for measuring them. We teach them how to release turtles safely from their nets because there's definitely bycatch around, around the area. We try to involve them in our volunteering programs. We usually show them the results that we get from that particular project, and because we know that if we want them to stop doing certain things that affect sea turtles, we need to give them alternatives. So we usually try to train them in those alternatives to see if they can actually start doing something else.
This may be a dumb question. Again, coming from the perspective of a grizzly bear biologist, we have to contend with a lot of direct human conflicts, whether it's shutting people out of logging areas or shutting out hunting, for example, conflicts with livestock, so on. Are there, other than developments and pollution, which are plenty, what are the major conflict points between humans and turtles? Do they have any conflict with this? Thinking of those sea lions, who are competing for salmon with humans.
There's
anything
definitely
like that with any of the turtles, or is it really just limited to pollution and disturbing their nesting areas and so on?
Well, there's definitely bycatch. One of there's actually one study that our organization did probably 12 years ago, 2000, something like that. And what they found was that the major aggregation areas for foraging were also overlapped with the areas where most of the fishermen went to fish, right? Because they're very productive areas. So there's an overlap. And that's probably one of the major threats. But again, it's talking to them. It's showing them how bad practices when they go out fishing can cause the death of the turtle. Bycatch is probably could be avoidable, definitely, but what we're trying to minimize is the death of a turtle that gets caught in a net. So it's just telling them that you need to watch your net, do not leave it overnight, just keep it there for a couple hours. And those are the things that are usually working towards reducing bycatch.
Okay, great. Well, I can stop asking questions. I can bug you another time, perhaps. Anyone else who's joining us to have a question? Melania? Yep, looks like Maria has a question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hola, Melania.
Hola, María. Gracias por asistir.
Thank you for your presentation and congratulations on the excellent work you have done. My question is, what has been the greatest challenge in conducting this type of research of measuring temperatures and nesting beaches, since the process can be quite complex? And how have you addressed it or overcome this challenge? I'm asking because your experience could provide valuable insights for future research projects.
Yeah, well, there are so many challenges around that because I think there's a mixture of factors affecting temperature and nesting beaches. So coastal development, climate change, And I guess the biggest challenge is to actually convince the people that can fund this type of programs, because we are an NGO. We do not get funds from the government. We get donations. We write proposals to get the funds. So trying to convince the people that can fund this that the work on the nesting beach, try to figure out what's going to happen with climate change or with temperature, or even trying to maintain a long-term monitoring program is really hard to explain, right? So people keep asking, why do you keep doing the same thing? I mean, we don't see any results. Well, we have to remember that turtles are long-lived organisms, right? So we are not going to see results from one nesting season to the other. We need time to actually see population changes because of that, lifespan that they have. So I think that's the biggest challenge, trying to convince people that long-term monitoring is important, that we need to get data out of it, that it is important to figure out what's going to happen. And we haven't successfully accomplished that yet. So, but we're working on it.
Also impossible
Yeah.
to say how bad things would be if you weren't doing the work you were doing. How much worse would things have gotten in the meantime. I'm sorry if I cut you off, Maria. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Melania. Thank you.
You're welcome, Maria.
Victoria asked if people have access to the recording, and I will post the recording. All of our previous talks are posted on YouTube, on our playlist, which you can access from our Wildlife Wednesday page. There's this lower section with previous talks. So yes, I'll have this posted. Give me a few days at least. I'm unfortunately traveling right now, but they are all available. Yes, so please share widely. Any other questions?
Cool.
A lot of really great questions this time.
Yes, I really like this. Keep
Well, and if
shooting
folks
questions.
come up with questions later, I'll go ahead and offer up my our contact information for any of our instructors is available on the CWS website. If you have other questions, you want to reach out, more questions about her course, for example, that's coming up. Surely wish I could take it, especially the field part. So yeah, feel free to reach out to any of us about questions or what's upcoming talks, suggestions, recommendations, anything people have. I'd love to hear it. But if people are done with questions, we can go ahead and wrap up. Again, another huge thank you to everyone tuning in today from around the world. Again, please share the recordings with peers. It's great to see as much reach as we can for the program. Hopefully you'll see people here again. Thank you, Melania, for your time, for the presentation. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I'm sure it's going to continue being a hit. And this week in particular, it's just perfect timing. We're really glad it worked out.
Yes.
Thank you all again.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Jeff, and thank you everyone for attending. I hope you had a great time with us. And like Jeff said, share away. See you soon.
And cut back on plastics, talk to your political leaders,
Right.
support research, get engaged, all of the good things.
Act now, definitely.
Yes.